and welcome to the Made in Africa podcast. I'm your host, Kemeshi Samuel, and we have in the studio here with us Rachael Ajibade. She is founder and CEO of HospitalConnect.
Hello.
Thank
Hi.
you for
Do I clap for myself?
Yeah, I should even clap for you based off what I put you through today.
Yeah.
Thank you for
hi.
doing this with us. I'm being very patient. Like, I really mean it.
Thank you for having me
Amazing,
too.
Amazing.
Thank
so
you.
let's get right into it then.
Sure. Ready.
What was it like growing up? Would you say you grew up in an entrepreneurial background, and did that shape what you're currently doing now as an entrepreneur?
Yeah. So my dad was in the 9 to 5.
Okay.
My mom was she was a businesswoman.
Businesswoman,
Yeah. So
proper.
she used to be like a distributor for Cadbury and
Nice.
noodles
Yeah.
and AP biscuit, gingerbread and those things. So we were
wow.
more in the
Oh,
provision.
gingerbread, like
Yeah,
the gingerbread. Wow.
Yeah. And butter bread,
Yes,
those,
Oh my, I
back
love
then.
gingerbread.
Yeah. So my mom used to be like
Yeah,
a distributor. Her name was EI First Store in
Okay.
K2 12. So I really grew up there.
Yeah.
And as a kid, my mom would send you to K2 Market and
Yeah.
tie the money in clothes
Yeah.
and tie it around your waist. And I've always been very tiny and skinny. So you can imagine a tiny girl walking in front of a wheelbarrow with a lot of
Right.
goods and all that. But
Yeah.
I think most of that made me know that I was going to be something in the an entrepreneur
something
or
of
business.
your own,
Yeah. And I think that my favorite part was always when my mom allows me to display the biscuits on the table.
Okay.
So we put them on the carton and then we mount them up, and it
stack
looks
them.
very
Nice.
attractive
Yeah.
from afar, right? And every time people pass by, even though you don't want to buy,
But just the view
just
of
looking
that,
at it
like you'll be like,
attracts
the
them.
money comes up.
Yeah. So usually my mom would get people say, "Oh my God, like where's your daughter? That one, that tiny one, or whatever
I never
it
knew
is."
that you could actually speak.
Oh yeah, I can.
Nice.
I can. So I think that was a huge that played a huge role in determining
Interesting.
what I wanted to be.
Yeah.
At least I knew I wanted to be a businesswoman.
Okay.
What sector I wasn't
You were not
sure,
sure,
but I knew that I like trading. I like the thrill of buying and selling and giving. Yeah.
That
So I
makes
think that played a
So
huge
were you a
role.
commercial student in?
Oh yeah, I was.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I was a commercial student. I actually finished from Obafemi Awolowo University. I studied public administration or business, both of them. That's how
No
we
wonder
call
you're
it,
so. Oh my God. I feel like okay. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I finished from Ife.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Give us timeline. University.
Yes, I think my set would be about 2011 to 2000 and it will be 15, but on the certificate it'll be like 16.
Okay.
So something like that, 4 years.
All right.
Ife. I didn't try any other school, but I went to
Fantastic.
OAU. And it kind of makes sense to actually read public/business administration, sort
Right.
of, because you will not study public administration alone in Ife. They will give you a lot of courses that would be like a mix of both of them. So it made sense to want to do something in administration. and
Kind
all
of
that.
similar to what we see in like Western universities where you have a major and you have a minor.
Yeah, something like that.
Okay,
Yeah, so
fantastic.
it was pretty good.
Yeah, so right after university.
Yeah, right after uni, of course, NYSC. And
Where did you serve?
service gist is another gist on its own, actually. I got posted to Adamawa.
What?
Yeah, unfortunately for me, I did have a accident. I was involved in a road accident
Oh my God.
while going for my NYSC.
So sorry.
I had like a fracture in my skull. Yeah, it was
Really?
Yeah, it was bad. I got there.
Oh my goodness.
A bit unconscious. There was blood. I was bleeding in my head and all those things. So they had to fly me back to Lagos. To my parents, thank you so much for sending her, but she never did anything in the camp. So, but I think that was my first exposure towards the health sector. So here's the thing. From the outside, it's very easy for you to be like, I don't fall sick and I don't go to the hospital and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Until you experience
actually do.
something or a family member experience something, or a friend experience something, and then you get a glimpse of this is really what is happening in this space.
Sector,
So I think I had the accident somewhere in Gombe. I don't know the north very much. But I got to Adamawa sometime 2 a.m. The coppers in the camp, the doctors were like, we don't know what to do. So they took me in an ambulance. Then they took me to Federal Medical Center Yola.
Yeah.
When I got there, I didn't know what a CT scan was or an MRI. To be honest, I didn't have any idea. But I know that for them to determine what to do to me, they needed those equipment, but they didn't have it. Yeah, they didn't have it. So you can understand how terrified I was. Like, wait, we don't have this in this entire place at that time, though. I don't know about now. So eventually, very nice, caring doctors and nurses. They got me an X-ray. They did a scan. We're like, oh, okay. Well, she does have like sort of like a puncture, and she has a Rachael Ajibade, blah blah blah. What do we do? Do we try to stabilize her before we send her back home, or am I willing to stay behind? Well, if you don't have a CT scan, I'm not staying behind. I just take me back home. And I think when I came back, I got treated in lawsuits. But I was, my mom was my primary caregiver and all those things, and that was actually my first encounter with being in a hospital requiring like critical care and maybe not getting what you really need.
I was trying to wrap my head around it. Like, your story is one of many that we don't even know about.
Oh yeah,
like encounters of people going for service on the road.
Yes, on the road. Oh, it was terrible. It was terrible.
So were you given like an exemption or how?
Oh yes, I was. Okay. So they gave me a letter when I came back because I couldn't even go for like signing of the stuffs. Like I couldn't. For the most part, like 6 months I was in the house and I couldn't serve. Noises were a bit more louder because of my ears are like a bit more exposed. It was a terrible period, but that was a once in a lifetime sort of like experience where you're sort of like having like close to death experience, to be honest.
Right. I feel
and when you're back into it, your brain starts to process of what just happened to me. Oh my God, this just happened to me.
Yeah.
And your survival instinct is like, now when you're in the car, if anyone is driving any I'm like
I see which means you'll definitely not be a driver that uses their phone while on the steering.
I know.
Very rarely.
I'm also a very smart driver, just so we're clear.
Oh, nice.
But
I totally relate because in October last year, I had a surgery. My appendix ruptured.
Oh, wow.
And I was in pain for days. I was not sure, right, until I went to do the test and all that. So I totally relate to that experience of, although technically, right, the medical people tell us that the appendix surgery is very minor, which it is. But for me, I never saw myself on an operating table. Like,
so it was major.
Thank you. It was major for me. So after then, how did you get back into work?
Okay, so my story about working in the health sector it's kind of like a very funny one. Are you a Christian?
I am, yeah.
Oh, okay. So I do strongly believe in God.
Okay.
And I do not take a lot of things about like in life as coincidence. I do think that a lot of things, like they are orchestrated, and sometimes we get carried away with the pain and the suffering, and then we miss out on the fact that something is actually happening in our lives. After
like we don't zoom out.
So like after that experience, like I said, I was home for like 6 months, so I couldn't serve actively. I have a friend rather.
Okay.
She was living to the States.
Okay.
And apparently she said there was a makeup artist job where they needed a model for the job.
Yeah.
And I was like, they need a model, why me? She was like, oh, I know you had an accident and you have some insecurities because your eyes is black and whatever, but I think you're going to be perfect.
I'm not seeing any of those.
Oh, no, this was like 4 years ago or like 5 years ago. Right. And so she was like, I recommend you for the model job. I was like, okay, fine, I'll just go and find out where it is. And so she gave me an address to go to the island. And somehow I landed in, the address was Vedic Life Care Hospital. The address was Vedic Life Care Hospital. And this was 5 years ago. This is 2018, 2019.
Okay.
So I'm like, hello, are you sure?
This is the place.
What does an hospital need a model for? Brief background though, before I went for NYSC, I'd done a sales representative job with a tourism firm in Ikeja.
Okay.
So I had a bit of sales experience on how to like sort of like sell myself or sell something.
Yeah.
So I kept that on the CV. When they said they were looking for a modeling job, I wasn't going to go with the CV now. I didn't know what it was. I thought it was just a first model. But I dressed nicely, as always.
As always.
And so, like, very presentable, very ready. When I got there, someone just came to the reception and she said, are you here for the sales manager role? And I was like, sales manager role? I
Yeah.
was like, yeah, I am.
For real.
And she was
you did
like,
that.
yeah, she was like, where's your CV? And I took my phone and I just went through I was like, can you help me print it out? Please, I'm going to pay you some money. Just help me print it out or something.
Oh,
so
my goodness. What?
yeah, I know. So she printed it out. And this Indian guy, very young guy, came out and he said, are you here? I was like, yeah. Oh, whatever. Let's have an interview. He was like, yeah, we actually need a sales person. And he was like, sell me. And now all of the experience I had when I was selling tourism, just everything was just like, so it was very easy for me to just put to skills, whatever it is I had learned. And it was a very practical meeting, nothing about even what I had not even gotten my certificate from OAU by then, by the way.
Wow.
It was just the fact that I had a personality
and I could show that
I had the experience, which was like my major takeaway from all of these things, which would be ready. To be honest, a lot of the opportunities that we're looking for, we most time think it has to be in a very nice way, abundantly packaged and all those things, and it could just come in the most mundane and easy things, like you're not even thinking so much about it, but your mind needs to be prepared for it just in case it comes around. So that's how I started working in the hospital.
Got that job.
Yes, I got the job.
Wow.
I got the job.
How long were you there for?
3 years. So what then happened was, after getting the job, it's one thing for you to use your personality or your skills or your show some potential that you can do the job. It's another thing when you get the job that you actually like perform. So at this point, I didn't even know how to pronounce the word orthopedics, gynecology, like nothing. I had no idea what
like
this was.
With that industry
so
at
I started to study a lot. I read a lot. I started to study a lot. I would get into a car and go to UCH, and I'll go to OETHC to just go and find out more about the government sector when it comes to healthcare, like the hierarchy, who is the HOD for oncology and blah, blah, blah. Like I started trying to build contact for myself and also learning. It's
that
not
must have been a lot of pressure though.
Well, the thing is, there was passion for me. This is not even about just healthcare. I think it's something that generally, whatever is doing, like just do it well, right? It might not be the sector that you want it to be, but there's still something there for you. So at that point, you just finished school. How do you know that's not the sector you want it to be?
Well, see, because we've already been pre-conditioned. Like, you already have this one thing you were going for.
Exactly, and so you're expecting that.
Exactly.
But in this case, if God is saying, I'm putting you here for now, then like that's where you need to be. So I started, like, I'd read a lot. I had a very nice boss at that time. We were within the same age bracket, not age bracket, but like 3 years older. And he was also in the health space, so we were more like a team. And it was very nice to have someone that was, you read this and you read that, and I'll do some reports, and then I'll go on these trips and meet doctors. I'll come to Lasset, I'll come to Lut, I'll know their clinic days. Like, I had my own notes and all those things. So it was something like I didn't know much about the sector, but I was willing to learn about it and find my own space, because in this case, the sector is dominated by either you have a hospital, or you're a doctor, or you're not like you're a practitioner. There's not really much of a space for
someone who just came into the industry,
or like a sales or business person. Like, what are you doing? Like, you have to sort of like have your own niche in it, which can be a good thing and also like a difficult thing. I won't say a bad thing. It can be a good thing and a difficult thing to do. So you need to be like extremely passionate about, whatever it is you're doing, for you to know what is in it for you at the end of the day. So I started working so much. And then I started looking into what is the current assistant flow of revenue for this company and what can I do to improve it. Which was a challenge that became a lot of pressure at that point. And I did prove, I did increase that revenue. I think about, doing a bit of a reverse tourism at that point. I once had a patient that needed to do a hip replacement, and she had about like 6 million naira then, which was just enough to do the surgery. But when she was calculating the flight fee and she and somebody else fee. It became a lot of money. And the kids are donating money, but it's still not just enough for all the things that they needed. And that was when I started looking into, okay, what can I do? What do we even need in this country to make this surgery happen? Right? It's very easy. I can just fill a form and send the patient out of the country to do these things. And it's good because they'll probably pay you some money and whatnot. But in this case, I was trying to increase the revenue of this particular company and also boost their credibility and also like do things to make them stand
Establish
out.
them,
So it meant that I had to take the risks of doing it over here, which also required a lot of local doctors too, and they were very supportive of it. Everybody wanted to learn. It's not a competition. It's like, if you're doing it, how can I be a part of it?
Exactly.
And I think that
was that the first that was being done in that hospital?
Yes, at that time. Wow. Yes, it was orthopedic surgeries. Wow. Yeah, so usually they just like refer the patient out and all those things. So we started doing it like internally. Oh, nice. And what did I do to get those clients? It was a lot of work. I went through at least 6 years of data of everyone that's ever walked into that hospital to get consultation on orthopedics. Like I went to, because it's easy for me to run ads, which is what we would normally do now. Yeah. But I felt like there was already existing data. How can I convert this data into what I need? So that's why I started from. And and I think that was my first major break. Yeah. Like I could do this thing. Wow. I could find a way to bring in my business mindset.
And then
thanks to mom.
Problems,
yes, and solve problems. Yeah. And it wouldn't look like you're being selfish or being money hungry or whatever. Like there would still be a passion in it or empathy in it because you're not losing touch with what your goal is.
Exactly. Yeah.
Even though you're thinking about business, So that's how I started working in the hospital, and from there.
So you were there for 3 years.
Yes. Then I started my own consulting company, and then I also have a medical ambulance company.
So at what? Yeah. At the end of the 3rd year, what clicked and you were like, let me now branch out and do my own thing?
Not much. COVID, at the end of the, 2.5 years, thereabout, or like 2 years, let's just say 2 years. COVID happened 2020. So at the end of 2019 to 2020, I actually felt like it was more. And I don't know. I'm not one to tell people what to do at what point or at some point, but I just felt it was more. Yeah. I started getting a bit uncomfortable, which is how sometimes God talks to me.
And it had nothing to do with the work environment.
So I think it would be less of that. Okay. Of course, there were things going on privately between me, and maybe I was a bit uncomfortable, and I was mixing a lot of like emotions with the work. I was also a bit anxious. There was a lot of things. With the result that came, also came some of my own mental.
Start feeling them. What's what they call it?
But like you just start to feel a bit imbalanced and you're uncomfortable and all that. You want
to always stop what you've done.
Yeah. So I left. I started working at another hospital. But what I eventually did was facilitate the merger between the new hospital I went to and the old one.
Really?
Yes. What had happened was the one I went to was not having constant recurrent revenue because of the foundation of the company and all of these things. So it made sense that there was a merger.
When you say foundation, what do you mean?
Well, I think people think that opening a hospital automatically equates money.
Right.
I think that there's a lot of structuring that goes into it, and I don't even think it's given enough credit. It's a lot of work. I'm looking at this place and you're like, okay, how can I convert this building to a hospital? People just think it's about carrying the bed, getting it off, getting it off, and just putting it there. No, there's a way ventilation has to be and the kind of AC that you have, because when one thing is affected, almost every other thing is affected.
Oh, wow.
Where you put your OR, your OT, rather, your operating theater, it has to be somewhere that is scrollable, movable. So there's a lot of
so many things to consider.
Details, architectural details,
and even for efficiency.
Yes, right? For efficiency and for sustainability, because it's not every day you're going to wake up and say, I want to change this bulb. So there's so many things that goes into setting up a hospital. And when you do it like you're building a house. So after this merger, after facilitating this merger, that was another peak in my own career, if you think about it. So you just moved from being a sales head to being a business head.
Did you get some kickback from that?
Kickbacks how?
Like, were you paid for that?
Oh yeah. Oh, I got promoted 3 times in a year.
Oh my god.
Oh yeah, I of course nice. I got paid.
Because that's a big
yeah, it was
deal,
good. Like a result was coming.
Exactly.
Yeah. So from doing that, to helping people facilitate the merger, it meant like I could see how people could be less of a competition and more of a collaboration. So it meant like I was seeing something differently, and I was taking that approach. So after that, of course, COVID happened. Then I started doing a bit of consulting for some, companies. Then from there, from whatever money I made, I decided to go into setting up a medical ambulance company, which is like an emergency company. I started with one of my partners at the time. We had about 3 or 4. We had the station, we had in Ikeja, on the island.
What did it take to set that up? Because
that
must have been very capital intensive.
It is.
Yeah.
It is very. Especially when you're getting like an ALS, like very proper vehicle, it's a lot. It's a lot. And but my other partner was experienced in it. So now I'd always come in from the business side of things. She always came in from the what is the certification? What do we need to have?
Licenses.
Licenses, and then the doctors, the recruitment. She was very good at that. Why I handled mostly the business and the operation side of things. So it was kind of like a good partnership before we start. So after doing the medical ambulance company, how the HospitalConnect come about? Exactly. On that day. I cannot forget. It was like October 2021. I was coming back from church. I used to go for this early morning prayer meeting in the case. I was coming back from church, and while at the Jakande roundabout, an ambulance had passed by. And it was my ambulance, so I called my team members, and I was like, "What's going on? Because I'm moving very quickly. Is there something going on?" And they're like, "Yeah, there's somebody in the ambulance, and we're taking her to, a hospital. But I'm not sure she knows that they don't do what we're going there for." So it meant like there was, and these cases happen very often where they will have gotten to where they're going to, and then they're like, "Oh, we can't treat this case." Then you take to the next person, but by the time the person gets to the third or fourth place, so I've seen a lot of those cases. And then I told the guy, I was like, how about you suggest something to them? Suggest the next place to go, the place to go to fix it. Suggest it. But I could also understand that patients are a bit more. You can't suggest these things to people
they know where they want to go.
They know where they want to go to. So it's almost like you have to play by their books or by their rules before you try to give them a suggestion. Before anything happens, and they try to put the blame on you.
And Nigerians will do that.
Yes. So getting home, I was like, well, how about there was a platform where I know you know where you're going, but peradventure you were looking for something else. Or something is specific, or maybe an ICU, or you're looking for a bed space. Like, you have gotten to somewhere and they're like, they don't have an ICU. Which one has the next one? Most likely we want to ask the receptionist or someone there, or try to Google these things. What if we had a platform that could be more of like a listing and directory? And then, like, it's go there. So that was the initial thought behind HospitalConnect. Like, you know what? I'm going to try and aggregate all these partners. We have these things for global and food. Right. And all these guys. Why not have it for help? So that was the initial idea behind HospitalConnect, which comes about the name. I'm trying to connect everyone into one space. Of course, like when you start with that, you start to see that, we don't have to wait till it gets to the point of ICU. Right. Let's try to backtrack a little bit. When a patient comes into a hospital, you're thinking, talking to the receptionist. And then sometimes the receptionist or the customer care person saying, okay, you need to see the GP first, and then it directs you to the person that's going to treat you, depending on what you're complaining about. Sometimes we come into it and say, we want to see the GP, we want to see the gynae, like straight up. Like we are the ones in court recommending and suggesting what we think we need. And now sometimes we guess right. Oh, since there's something within my stomach, maybe it's gynae or whatever. And then when we meet the guy is like, oh, this is not my case, go here. And then we start to complain that maybe we've been passed all up and down. But the normal thing would be, oh, get to the hospital. Maybe talk to the first doctor, the first person. Then he listens to you. Then recommends you to what unit or department you're supposed to get treated for. And then when this person is done, most likely they tell you to go and do a test or get a drug, which will bring in the pharmacy and the lab. And then when you're done with either test, you go back to the doctor to review it, then you go and get some drugs, or you get admitted. Or you get to do surgery, and then when you're done, you're admitted in hospital, then you go home, then you need recovery care. But when you look at all of these things, they are all sort of like a cycle. I feel, at least that's where I look at it from. It's like it's revolving around the same thing. It's the same clinical people that will solve this problem. A pharmacy is not, it's not, I know it's an entity on its own, but they are, the doctor is the one recommending the drug. So if you think about it,
the pharmacy is outside of the chain.
Yes. But when you look at the labs too, when the doctor says go and do a test, where do you go? To the lab. But it's still coming from who? The doctor. From the hospital. It's just a cycle. And I felt like, why do I need to book a hospital here, then go and look for the lab somewhere else, then go and look for the pharmacy somewhere else, treating it as separate entity when it's possible to bring them all together into one space and make them one.
Fantastic.
So think about it as I have any healthcare inquiry. I may not even know the solution to it, but I know when I come to this platform, there will be a trace of where I can find that solution. So literally, HospitalConnect was trying to solve that, which is sort of like a lot, because in the grand scheme of things, startups and founders and
so it's interesting how the idea came together. But how did you settle on the name HospitalConnect? I feel like it's the perfect name.
Yeah, actually. Also, I think some of my long-term goals added to what I was naming it.
Okay.
If I'm going to be honest. So at first, of course, I wanted a platform where it's easy access for anyone, everyone, at any time to gain access to healthcare inquiries anytime in time of need. And then from there, it's like you're trying to reach an ambulance company, you can find it there. You're trying to look for a hospital, you can find it there. You need home care, you can find it there. It looks like a lot, but when you think about it, they're all sort of like connected. So you could just have a platform where everybody gets to like onboard themselves and you can just reach them, more like a marketplace sort of thing. Now, HospitalConnect, it's just like I'm trying to build a hub, connecting each other. So so it just made sense to do that. To at least name it that. It was sort of like effortless. And it sort of looks long, but when you think about it, it just makes sense.
No, it just makes sense.
It explains itself without you
trying to figure out what this stuff does. About. Yeah, perfect. So what were the first steps you took to building out the platform?
Well, I do think that I made a lot of errors because I was moving from a one-man business or like a business person to a one-man business and entrepreneur. That's a different ballgame.
Right.
Like, one-man business, I'm not recruiting anyone. I'm just doing some of my gigs and consulting and making my, paying myself and whatnot. Now I'm transitioning into tech, into building an actual company. Lord. That was a tough one. I think it's still a tough one, to be honest. Right. I think a pastor said something yesterday which I found very, very interesting. He said that sometimes you cannot prove that you know what you're doing until it's tested. Okay, so like you can't prove that I figured it out or I transitioned and it worked. Like, until somebody else tests what you're saying, and it works, and they will say, you actually know what you're saying. Right. And I think this transition part of things and building a startup, and I think it's better experienced than
explained.
Explained.
Right.
I think it's better experienced than explained because I listened to like 50 podcasts from all these founders
Prepping
and
you.
all along, and there were all these notes I made.
Yeah.
They still do not prepare me for
you can never be
for the kind of like encounter I was about to have.
Yeah.
And I do think that, you know, at every stage you need to have your own level of motivation, like your own, like where you're drawing the strength from and just power from.
Yeah.
So I'll give you the example that my pastor gave yesterday. Oh, Pastor Ayo, by the way. Shout out to Pastor Ayo. He did say, and this was like made a lot of sense, right? I've never heard it explained this way. So he's a doctor.
All right.
And he has all of this list of things a pregnant woman is supposed to do at this stage, what happens, your baby, blah, 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 your antenatal. Like, okay, cool. He then said, you will tell the pregnant woman all those things, right? But when the woman gives birth, who actually has experienced all these things he said? Exactly. Yeah. So who is better to explain the pain that
makes perfect sense.
I know.
No wonder female doctors and like midwives are a lot more especially those that have given birth, a lot more empathetic to
because
those that
you know, you can say all these things in book. Have your team, have your product designer, have your this, have your
but implementation.
Like experiencing it, executing it. You know, there was a day I kept a post out and I was like, why do consulting firms attack founders by saying, what's your logo and what's your color and what's your brand this and what is the brand that? I'm like, do you think they know what they are trying to do? Do you, do you understand?
Go, right?
like I get the fact that, you know, in some cases you might have a moon board and some people have that privilege to have it figured out. Some people do not. Right? And I don't mean to say any of this to like scare anyone, but I do think that even though you don't have it figured out initially, shouldn't stop you from trying to figure it out. You know, and it's people say, oh, just take a step. I don't know if you just take a step, but you know, try to have an idea. It might not give you all the closure that you need, but it might give you a bit of like, you know, some directions at least as to what to expect from it. I also specifically do not think that you need to be a perfect person to perform a miracle. I don't think you have to be. I didn't study anything in the health space. I did not have any experience in tech. But
you found a way to make it
work. I think that's the beauty of HospitalConnect for me.
What was it like putting the team together?
I think when it comes to the team, if I'm going to be honest, it's a try and error situation for me at this time. If I'm going to be honest.
No, with everyone actually, because you don't know how someone will behave on the job.
Yes. Even aside from the behavior, you sometimes as a founder you think, I need to put this idea together. This and this and this and this and this is who I need to do it. Sometimes when you start to put the idea together, you start to realize that I didn't really need this particular person, and you'll have spent the money to get the person. So you might have to use them or fire them, then keep your team smaller and do it again. You know, so it's been a bit of hire kind of situation. But the core team, the first set of team were pretty strong, if I was going to be honest. Yes, we made some errors because remember, I'm not a technical founder. I had to learn on the job. So we made a lot of errors.
That's what I want to hear from you. Did you get, you're a solo founder?
Yes.
So I want to understand how you got to build out the platform. Seeing as you don't have a technical co-founder, so what was that process like?